Good morning, a very, very, very good morning to you from a very sunny, warm, blue skied northeast of England. Beautiful today. I'm so glad that you've been able to tune in and watch this podcast. Hope this helps you, hope it blesses you, as always, hope it encourages you in some just small way. If I can make just a small difference by what I have to say this morning, hope it blesses you. This just a heads up, this is my penultimate um, message before holiday time. So I've got this week and then next week and then off on holiday for a few weeks and back in September. So I'll keep you up to date next week with the last podcast before the holidays. Okay, thank you so much this morning. You do realize that everyone who watches this podcast, once you've watched it, everything you eat has no calories. Okay, you do know that, don't you? Just kind of, just high. You never get cellulite. There's no fat in the food that you eat. It's calorie free, okay? So no sugar, anything like that. Just want to tell you that. That's why it's important that you watch this podcast or listen to this podcast as much as you can. And the more times you listen to it, the more times you watch it, the less calories there is, okay? So bless you this morning if you believe that. You believe anything. Okay, here we go. Sunday, I think it's the 19th of July, something. It's World Cup final day. I have no idea at this point if England are in the World Cup. This is Wednesday morning in my time. I'm recording it nice and early. So I don't know what's happening, but come on, England. Here we go. I want to talk this morning. My subject is, my title is just for a few minutes, is a letter from a giant. A letter from a giant. We've had letters the last few weeks on this podcast from various people, from troublemakers, from Jezebel, and different. This morning I'm talking about a letter from a giant. So I'm going to read just a couple of verses. You will know this story. Everybody knows this story about the little guy beating the giant, etc., etc. But I'm reading the scene before the big scene. Okay, so we know the big scene. David comes along and chops the giant's head off, and everybody's happy apart from the giant, obviously. This is before. Okay, we don't often concentrate on in these verses or on this story what happened before. So this is, if you think of it like a movie, David and Goliath are the big scene. This is the scene before the big scene. Okay, but it's very important this morning from our context watching this. Okay, 1 Samuel 17 is the scene of the big story. And it says this, I think it's verse 7. It says, a giant, nearly 10 feet tall, stepped out from the Philistine line into the open. Listen to this, wearing 126 pounds of armor. That's more, I think that's, yeah, it's more than our weight. So wearing my body weight plus probably another stone in weight. He's wearing this 126 pounds of armor and a spear tip weighing over 15 pounds. That is phenomenal. Okay, I would struggle to even lift that spear tip off the ground. Okay, so there he is, 10 feet tall, 126 pounds of armor, and 15 pounds is just his spear tip, not just his spear. So this is a whopper. Okay, this is a giant. So verse 8 says, Goliath stood there and called out the Israelite troops. Why bother using your whole armor? Whole army. Pick your best fighter, he says, and pit him against me. He says, give me a man and let us fight together. And that's his letter to the Philistines. That's his letter to the opposition. Verse 11 says this, when Paul and his troops heard the giant's challenge, read the giant's letter, they were terrified and lost all hope. So we don't often read that bit. We read the scene where David comes on and saves the day. We don't read the scene before where the giant's sending a letter out, sending a message out, saying, don't even bother coming in with your whole, just give me one man, I'll wipe him out, etc. I'll fight him. And when Saul and his troops heard that, they took it personally. They heard the giants' challenge. They were terrified and lost all hope. Have you ever had a letter from a giant? Maybe not talking about a physical one this morning, but let me put it this way. Okay, have you ever been made to feel any of these 5 things? And if you have, then I would say then you've had a letter from a giant. You've had a message from a giant. Have you ever been made to feel, number 1, inferior? Has anyone or anything, it's normally a person, you've ever met them, had a conversation with them, been in a meeting with them, maybe even been friends with them, maybe you know them, and maybe you know them quite well, and they've made you to feel inferior? Or you ever been somewhere and I don't know, maybe out for a meal or out for a coffee or to somewhere, and you just feel, because of the circumstances, the environment, the people there, the person meeting you, the person greeting you, the person serving you, I don't know, you feel inferior. Have you been in a relationship with somebody? And this is even worse. When you've been in a personal relationship with somebody and you put your trust in them, and you thought they cared for you and loved you and were friends or partner or husband or wife, but they made you feel inferior. I was talking to a lady this morning in Starbucks, and I have lots of short conversations in Starbucks with people, and I ask a lot of questions, I learn a lot about people. Now I see this lady every week, and she always comes in a Wednesday morning. She's only there half an hour, often say hello and that kind of thing. And I was talking to her this morning as I'm just getting my coffee, and we got on talking somehow about where she lives and where she works. And she said, I had to move because my partner abused me. And I was obviously shocked, and I sympathised with her, empathised with her. And she said, not in a physical way, but she said he was a narcissist. He only thought about himself. He only cared about himself. He only bought things for himself. He only treated himself. He only really loved himself. And she said, whatever I did for him, whatever, however much I tried, I felt inferior. And I think that's a horrible feeling when you haven't got that confidence is taken away from you, especially when you're in a relationship or a friendship, or maybe a work situation. Hopefully never a family situation. Hopefully it's never a family member that makes you feel like this, but can do. You've never met a physical giant, but you've felt inferior. You've had a message, you've had a letter from a giant. If ever you feel inferior. Number 2, have you ever been made to feel, number 2, small? Somebody said something. Somebody's looked at you. Somebody's embarrassed you. And I think that's a horrible thing. Like I said last week, I would never want to be any of these things to somebody else. I never ever want to make somebody feel inferior. Getting back to that, someone who is always talking about how much money they have, knowing that you're in need, knowing that you're in lack, and knowing that you're short, or always exaggerating how much they bought, the holidays they've had, the meals have been for, knowing that you're in need, and knowing that you can't quite match up to that, and you feel inferior. You feel small. If anybody has ever made you feel small in any situation, they're making you feel small because that person is a giant. That person is acting like the giant. You see where I'm coming from this morning? You might never have met a 10-foot tall person. but you met somebody who made you feel small because of the way they talk to you, because of the way they treat you. Once again, that can be a friendship, a partnership, a relationship, a marriage, by however by however they treat you. I never want to be that person who makes somebody feel small just because somebody's a cleaner, or because somebody is serving you, or because somebody is doing something for you and they're not earning £50,000 a year. Doesn't mean we have to make them feel small. We have to make people feel big. Can somebody say yes to that? And the church people say amen to that. We want to make people feel big. We want to make people feel better. I'm doing this podcast this morning because I never want people to watch this feeling small. If people have made you feel small this week, I want to make you feel big. I want this to grow you. I want to tell you this morning that you are not inferior, that you are not small. Just because somebody else can speak louder and boast more about what they've got and earns more, lives in a bigger house, drives a better and bigger car, and they tell you about it. No, you should never feel small. God has not created you to feel inferior and to feel small. God has created you to be in his image. In other words, God is not small and God is not inferior. So why do you feel like that? Because you've had a letter from a giant and they made you feel like that, okay? Number 3, have you ever been made to feel intimidated? And we talked about this a little bit last week, and intimidation. Somebody saying something, somebody doing something, or maybe a couple of people, which is even worse, when people gang up on you. Maybe when circumstances gang up on you. Maybe when you're in the middle of a perfect storm, everything's going wrong, everything's going down, everything is going against you. Maybe people are coming against you. Maybe people who they are giants in the respect that they are bullying. Goliath was a bully because of his size, because of his weight, because of his strength. He was a bully, and he challenged the army knowing that he could take out anybody, wipe out anybody. And so we meet people who intimidate us. We meet situations, not just people. We meet situations and we meet circumstances. We meet problems. Are you with me? We meet challenges that can be so big and so overpowering, and we feel inferior compared. We feel small compared to the challenge. We feel intimidated by the challenge. This message is for you this morning. You've had a letter from a giant. Have you ever been made to feel, number 4, ever been made to feel weak? Yeah, or I have many times, and that's not because somebody is showing off their strength. It's because, when you come to undo the jar of beetroot or the jar of jam and you're struggling with it and you're struggling with it, and Joy will say, my wife will say, give me a try. And I'm praying and hoping she can't do it, but she does one twist. And I always say, well, I must have loosened it for you. I am as weak as dishwater when it comes to muscles and when it comes to that kind of thing, okay? My grandson Caleb said to me the other day, I actually managed, he gave me a bottle to loosen the top. And he said, Papa, he said, I can never loosen these tops. I haven't got the strength to loosen these tops. And I said, well, I'm not much stronger, Caleb. Give me a try. But I've got to promise you, by some miracle and God's grace and God's mercy, I screwed the top off first time. And he was like in awe. He says, Papa, you were so strong. And I said, Caleb, I'm so weak. You must have loosened it for me. You ever been made to feel weak by somebody? Because of their strength, because of their power, because of their title, because they are strong and they know it, and they like to show you how strong they are. Ever been made to feel weak because somebody's been through something and you struggle through it? It might be an illness, it might be a sickness, it might be just a situation, finance situation, or health situation, or personal situation, and you know somebody who's gone through the same thing, but they seem to sail through it. And you're struggling this morning while watching other people succeeding. You're struggling with something this morning. You're wrestling with something this morning where you've seen other people just seemingly leap over it and get through it and be strong. And you feel weak this morning. If somebody or something has made you feel weak, you've had a letter from a giant. And number 5, finally, have you ever been made to feel less? And I think that's awful. When people make you feel less than the person you really are. You know, when people embarrass you, when people speak unkindly about you and to you, and you feel less, or when somebody's showing off. You know, it might be a close friend even, it might be a family member, it might be somebody who you've known for a long time, somebody you've just met, and they're showing off, they're boasting, and they're bragging, right? And they're bigging themselves up to the point that you feel less. There's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating what God has done for you. Are you with me? And what God has done in you, and what God is doing in your life, and the blessings that God has put on your life. I believe in celebrating all those kind of things, but not at the expense of making somebody else feel less. So if God has blessed me and I know they're struggling, then maybe I just need to keep quiet in that situation and listen to that person and not boast to that person and not brag to that person and not big up how much God has done for me, even though we should celebrate those things, but celebrate them at the right time, in the right place, with the right people. I never want anyone to feel weak or to feel less, to feel like they are less worthy, okay? Because that's how people can sometimes feel. And maybe this morning I'm talking to you and you feel, you look around you and you see, you know, you've heard how much people pray, and you've heard how many times people go to church, and you've heard how much success they've had. You've heard how many times they've had an envelope through the door, or an envelope through, or an unexpected gift, and you've seen how many times, you know, they've had the best of everything. Nothing ever seems to go wrong for them, and you this morning are struggling. You this morning are striving. You this morning are wrestling with something, and you just feel somebody has made you feel less. If you have ever felt, if you feel this morning any of those 5 things, then you've met a giant. You've had a letter from a giant. Let me give you, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 points, perhaps just 1 this morning. I've only got a few minutes left. I'm doing well so far. I haven't been attacked so far by any lions or anything, or horses. Yes, I have seen some deer run past here a few days ago. But listen. Number 1, I have never met a giant. Having said that, probably apart from my son-in-law, Callum, right, who I think is 6'4", but he towers above me. I've got to tell you though, he never makes me feel small, never makes me feel weak. Even though when you know, the odd occasion we go to hug him and he's up there, but he's not a giant by any means. He's tall, but I have never met a giant. I met a wrestler once, which is a different story, not for this week. Okay, I've told it before. I'll tell it again at some point. But he wasn't a giant. He was built like The Rock. But I've never met a giant. But I have met a few challenges that were too big for me, too strong for me, and were threatening to overcome me. Never met a giant, But I've met a few bullies in my time, going right back to grammar school, when people who were bigger and older thought they could make you feel small and weak. But in those days, right, I was probably physically stronger then than I am now, and managed to confront them and take them down, etc. That's a whole different story again. And I'm not going to big myself up, okay? But I've met a few bullies. Never met a giant, but I've met some opposition. Are you with me this morning? Can anybody identify with that? You've never met a giant, but you've met some challenges that were big, and maybe you're facing one right now. Maybe it's a challenge in your life right now, and it looks like a giant. It looks like a bully. It looks like opposition that is too big and too strong for you. I've never met a giant, but I've been in some battles against the odds. Come on, somebody this morning. You've been there, haven't you? I know you've been there. You've been in some battles that were against the odds. If somebody was a betting man, they would not bet on you to survive that battle, survive that challenge, survive that opposition. But you did this morning. Here you are, sitting here, standing there. You overcame it. You came through it. You beat it. But I've met some things, and I've met some people more powerful, louder, and bigger than me. Has anybody this morning, come on, who are you? You've had some challenges that were more powerful and louder and bigger than you. Maybe this morning you're facing it. Maybe you're facing opposition this morning. Maybe you're facing a challenge or a bully or a battle against the odds that is more powerful, louder, and bigger than you. Let me give you point number 2, then I'm done for this week. I'll carry on next week. I have met some challenges, bullies, opposition that were bigger than me. But number 2, but never bigger than the God that I serve, the God that I worship, and the God I have put my life in and my trust in. Are you with me this morning? I have met some challenges and bullies and opposition that were bigger, louder, and better than me and more powerful, but never bigger than my God. Never bigger than the God I serve, the God I worship, and the God I trust in. I want to encourage you this morning, as I finish, there is no challenge that is bigger than your God. Think about that this morning. However threatening it is, however overpowering it is, however it might be a letter from a giant, there is no challenge bigger than your God. There is no threat bigger than your God. And this is more or less what David said when he got the letter from the giants, when he faced Goliath. This is more or less what he said. Listen, there is no bully. I don't care how loud they are, how ugly they are, how big they are, how disgusting they are, right? How threatening they are. There is no bully bigger than your God. Somebody say a huge church amen. And even if you want to put in a hallelujah to that, okay? Bless you. Listen, there is no giant this morning. Nobody around. There is no giant bigger than your God. Oh my goodness. How good is that this morning? Does anybody believe that? Because my point number 3, which I don't know if I haven't got time for it this morning, but I want to give you point number 3 anyway, which I'll continue with next week. But point number 3 is just worth mentioning the title of point number 3, okay? Are you tired of saying point number 3? Here we go. Point number 3. The giants had met Saul and his army. Point number 3. But the giants had never met David and his God. And I'm going to just drop the mic there. I'm just going to leave that there and continue with the last message before the summer to go out on a really good, positive, strong, praiseworthy, celebrating high note. I'm going to give you this point to carry into next week. I want you to think about this week. Okay? Maybe you can write a message about this or do a podcast about this. But listen, the giant had met Saul and his army. But number 3, but the giant had never met David and his God. Drop the mic. And I'm going to tell you next week how that applies to you and to me in my life, in my season, in my challenge, facing my opposition, in my battle against all the odds. I want to leave you with that next week. And for next week, and that's where we'll start next week. Is that okay for you? Is that good? Does that help you? Does that encourage you? Does that build you up? Does that make you feel bigger? Because that's stronger, more powerful, enabled. That's the idea. Okay? Listen, have a great week. Looking forward to next week. And I can't wait to get back into this again just to help somebody. Okay? So listen, God bless you. Thank you again. We appreciate you and love you. Have a great week. Thank you. Bye.